This video is sponsored by Epic Career Quest, a new animated show featuring Ian Boggs and Shelby Young about the difficulties of finding a job. I voice the character Boombox, a robot dad who's trying to figure out what he wants to do for a living. There are multiple episodes out now on Google Career Certificates channel, and they premiere weekly. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to check it out. And if you enjoy the show, you can subscribe to stay updated. Yo, I asked Twitter to submit some questions about voice acting, and I'm going to answer them for you. Now, I'm just going to preface this. I'm just one guy. I don't speak for all voice actors, yada, yada, yada. Other voice actors' answers might be different. Anyway, let's jump into it. If you were to make a guess, how many characters have you voiced? So I actually sat down and kind of counted over 200 characters at this point, which is wild to me. I never imagined it would get to this point. But yeah, over 200. What are your suggestions on improving range? I'm interested in voice acting, but every time I feel demotivated by my inability to do multiple voices. Are there some good baby steps to help the transition into being able to better modify your sound? So one thing I'll just say straight up is, I've said before, focus on your acting first and foremost. Don't worry too much about, I can't do multiple voices. I can't do tons of different voices. One of the biggest misconceptions about voice acting, I think, is that you need this to be a good voice actor. No, you just need to be a good actor. However, if you do want to try to expand your range, my suggestion is to just try things. Like, take character types, take snippets of dialogue from things that you enjoy, and just try. You're never gonna know until you try. I think it's Billy West who said that, a bad impression is a new voice, and I think that's a good way to think about it. Just try different things. Even if it doesn't sound amazing from the get-go, it'll maybe help you discover a new voice or a new character that you never thought you could do. Is there any special equipment you need for voice acting from home? Really, the most important thing, I think, is a properly treated space. I actually only really record in studio now. Some people, they'll just use a closet and, do some padding in there. You can buy portable booths. They're a little expensive, but if you feel like that's something that, will benefit you, there's that. Don't get too wrapped up in, I gotta have the most expensive, best mic. Just get a good mic with an XLR cable, goes into a preamp. Yeah, I think what's more important is just making sure your space sounds good. A really professional quality mic will be pointless if the space that you're recording in sounds bad. Does it happen often for someone to audition for one role to then get recommended for another one they feel would be a better fit for their voice? All the time. That's why auditioning is so important. Even if you think, I don't have a chance at this, there's no point. I've auditioned for things and been cast as a completely different character because that was just maybe a better fit in their mind for that character. Or you audition for something and the casting director doesn't cast you in that project, but they will cast you in a completely different project down the road because they've heard your auditions and gone, this is he'll be good for so and so later on. So yeah, happens all the time. What would you say are the biggest misconceptions about voice acting? I touched on it earlier, but the idea that you have to have 1 million voices. Also, when people are like, I can recognize that voice actor, that means it's a bad performance. They didn't completely disguise their voice in a totally unidentifiable voice. Doesn't matter at all. Sometimes I'll tell people, who are making a demo reel, hey, focus less on, do these voices sound completely different, and go, are these characters believable? Do they showcase your strengths? So on and so forth. Has there ever been a character you like performing as from a show/game/piece of media that wasn't well received by the public? Oh yeah, this happens all the time. It's interesting as you go on in this career. Your experience recording for something does not always equate to how well received or popular or whatever the end result is. There are plenty of things I've worked on that I feel like either nobody watched or nobody liked or whatever, and I had a wonderful time. It was creatively fulfilling, so much fun. The director was a delight to work with. So again, I think what's become more important to me over time is am I being creatively fulfilled in the moment? Am I enjoying the craft in the moment? And if 0 people watch it later, yeah, it's a little disappointing, but that's not what's important to me now. You know, the best case scenario is, oh, I had a blast recording it and it was a hugely well-received thing. But you can't always have that, and you just kind of accept that. What do you do to avoid destroying your voice while voice acting? And what do you do when you have a cold or something that compromises your voice and you must record? Well, I'd say just knowing your limits. If there's a lot of yelling, usually if it's a good director, they will usually save that stuff for the end of a session so that you don't blow your vocal cords. You can always just tell them if you feel like, hey, I need to take a break, or hey guys, I need to call it early or something. Again, understanding a good director will get it. Like, yeah, I don't want you to lose your voice. If you lose your voice, that's way worse for us because we have to, you know, we're screwed. Or versus you take a break or whatever to recover. Knowing your limits, don't push yourself too much. I think it can be, especially early on in your career, you get like, oh, I don't want to disappoint. I don't want to look like, you know, dumb or whatever. I'm gonna just keep going even though it kills me. Just be honest. And then, you know, when you have a cold or something and you have to record, any understanding project will postpone. Don't go into a session sick. Don't get other people sick. It risks damaging your own vocal cords even more, and you're gonna sound bad. You're not at 100%. You're gonna put in a worse performance. So, you know, just reschedule. That's almost always how it goes when you're sick. You just tell them, and they'll usually go, yeah, okay, cool. We'll do it later. Is it fun? Yeah. Do you have a process or method to get into character? Does it adjust depending on the type of role? How much pre-work goes into developing a character's voice? The boring answer is to get into character, usually it's just they play a reference that I recorded before and I just hear it and go, oh yeah, that's the voice, and just kind of go in. I don't really need like a whole laborious process to get into character. It's usually just you dive in, at least for me. So the type of role doesn't really usually affect this. Pre-work, you know, it really just depends on your audition, right? Like, sometimes you do a voice for an audition, and then you come in and they want a completely different thing. So you just go, okay, instead of worrying too much, oh, I gotta, you know, do this and this and this. You just kind of go. I think the only I think the only exception might be like a voice match, where if you're trying to match a previous actor's performance, then, you know, you listen to references and stuff because you do want to be accurate, or at least as accurate as they want you to be. So that would require some pre-work to, you know, just get it in your ear, become very comfortable with it. But if it's an original character that you're doing, I usually just don't do too much, because I feel like if I'm too precious about it, it might just get changed later anyway. How often do you go to recording studios and act alongside other VA? So pre-COVID, Prelay or cartoons would often record in groups, and so I was very lucky to do it on like shows like OKKO or Craig of the Creek. And then I remember when COVID happened, it was on the day I was supposed to go in for a group record for Craig, and because of all the COVID stuff, it got changed to everyone went in one by one, and it was very disappointing. And then I came out of that session and went right into lockdown, and I was like, oh yeah, this will only be like a month or something, right? Well, I was wrong on that. But yeah, post-COVID, it's much less common now, unfortunately. Like, I still record a lot of cartoons, but more often than not, you are alone. I had one session for Craig where Craig's voice actor and I were in the Cartoon Network building, but in separate studios over a Zoom call. So like, that was nice to hear someone's, you know, performance in real time and bounce off of them. It's starting to come back a little bit, but I think a lot of voice actors have just become comfortable recording at home, and a lot of them just don't want to come into the studio. I'm not that type of actor. I love going into studio. In fact, I mentioned before, I only pretty much work in the studio. I hate working from home because, I gotta say, engineers are incredible. You know, I hate having to do my own gain and having to worry about, like, having an engineer who's amazing at their job, being able to make sure everything sounds good so you can just focus on acting. That's my jam. But I do wish there were more group records. For someone who deals with comparing themselves to other voice actors or content creators, what is the best way to get over and ignore that? This is a big thing. Like, I think it's something you just kind of have to work at over time. You're always going to be seeing your peers and go, oh man, I wish I could have done that, or I wish I could have read for that, or done that part, or been in that thing, or this thing. I always tell people, just be grateful for what you have accomplished, for what you've achieved. Focus on that. And I think it's very easy to just forget about what you have achieved and not enjoy it in the moment. I'd say, take the time to make sure you fully appreciate it. I think there's always also like a grass is greener on the other side kind of thing. Like, you might look at someone else and go, oh man, they really have it made, or they're totally content, or whatever. And then I'll talk to some of these people who I view as like, wow, you got it made, right? And they're like, nah, I wish I had this and this. And you're like, oh, it's a universal thing. Human nature is just, you will always want more. You'll always wish you had this, even when you've, had success. You just have to really appreciate what you have. And just, it's easier said than done. It's something you just got to work at over time. What does it mean for a voice director to be good at their job? What type of direction does a good director give that enables a voice actor to give the best performance? This, I think, is very subjective. I think for me, the voice directors that I get along best with, and I feel like are my favorite, are ones that give the actor some freedom. I think being too rigid, like, oh, it's got to sound like this, it's got to sound like this, can really drive actors crazy, including myself. Understanding the material. Sometimes you get directors who don't, and it's a little frustrating. Sometimes I've been in a situation where the director, I feel like, doesn't really get it, but the client, whoever is like, part of the production that I'm working for, they give better direction. That's always an unfortunate situation, but it does happen. Also clear direction, not super ambiguous, unclear. So someone who's clear, direct, just knows their shit. It sounds obvious, sounds like, of course, wouldn't all directors be like that? But they're not. I like chill directors as well. Like, chill, clear-headed directors. That tends to be more my speed. Do you believe that anybody can voice act? In other words, what do you believe it takes to be a good voice actor? No, I do not. But let me explain why. Just voice acting? Sure. I mean, if you want to voice act for fun, it will take more time for some people than others. But I think that if you put in the time and, and have proper discipline, then sure, I think anyone has the potential to voice act. However, if you want to be a working voice actor, can anybody do that? No, absolutely not. You have to love this with all your soul. Because it's so difficult to get work. It's difficult to get into the industry in the first place. It's difficult now when you get into the industry to get more roles, and to continue to get roles, you are competing against every other good voice actor you've ever known. It takes kind of a crazy person, I think, to do this. I think countless people want to do this, but does everyone have the discipline required and the patience and the dedication? No. Absolutely not. Unless you're extremely lucky. I mean, if you're just extremely lucky and, sure, that's great for you. But I think for the majority of us, it takes a lot of discipline and work and stamina and patience. Have you ever forgotten how to do a voice? Like one you've done previously and needed to do again later but just couldn't figure it out? Sure. I mean, that's what references are for. Any proper production will have a reference of your voice for that character and they'll just play it for you. So that usually solves that problem. It's not really up to you to make sure you remember exactly how you did every single voice. That's their job, to record it for you. Since we've seen you've been cast in a significant acting role in Blackberry, what would you say are the key differences for preparing for an acting role versus voice acting? Is this a precursor for more future acting roles, or is there a preference between the two for you? The biggest difference for your average voice acting job versus on-screen is just on-screen, you gotta memorize everything. Unless you're doing motion capture, then you do have to memorize. Doing things while you're speaking, hitting your mark, all of these things you don't really have to worry about in voice acting. This makes it sound like voice acting is really easy, but on the flip side, for voice acting, you don't have the benefit of your physicality, what you're doing, your presence on screen. You have to convey your emotion in with just your voice. I don't think it's very different in terms of how I approach it. In voice acting, I don't really think about what I'm doing. Although oftentimes I will be doing like miming things. Like if I'm hitting, like punching or kicking, I will do it like, to the side, or if I'm, doing things that require like, the sound of physicality, I will do stuff, I'm doing it right now, like just kind of showing like, if I'm choking someone, if it helps me anyway get into the moment more, and I think but as long as you're not interfering with, you're not hitting the mic or anything or making background noise. But for on screen, you really have to be aware of that. Yeah, so I think that's the major differences. In terms of will I do more live action acting in the future? I'd love to. I really actually do enjoy it quite a bit. Just depends on if people want to cast me. Let's say Blackberry was the last time I ever got to act on camera. I guess that'd be a little disappointing, but I wouldn't be broken up about it. Whereas if I did voice acting and I never got to do it again, that would really, really be hard. Was there ever a part you got where you nailed the audition, and when it came time for production, the character or direction was different than expected? Oh yeah, all the time. I think one notable example was Borderlands 3. When I came in, they were like, hey, just so you know, we've changed the character, can you do it more like this? And so the first session was a really interesting sort of like figuring out, okay, I came in with this expectation, we're doing something completely different, let's really zero in on how this character should act, should sound. So you have to be prepared for that. I think that's why I tried not to do too much pre-work, because sometimes you come in and like, hey, by the way, that character is not even the same character anymore. So all that prep you did kind of goes out the window if you focus too much on that. How the fuck do you make a demo reel? Well, when you're starting out, you don't have, like I have a visual reel now, which is snippets from stuff I've done. But in the beginning, you don't have stuff that you've done. So I always tell people, hey, just figure out which character types you excel at. Try to make them sound as believable as possible, not only in acting, but also in production. So add background music, add sound effects, add things that make it sound like these are taken from real shows or real video games or whatever. You can hire people to direct you. You can hire people to edit together a demo reel for you. I think it is worth it to, if you need to hire someone to make sure it sounds as polished as necessary. It should sound like these are real examples from, existing works. And then there's some stuff you can do, like, maybe for the order of stuff, like, if there are similar sounding voices, put a different sounding voice in between. That all can vary. And also the length, I think, when you're starting out, you don't want it to be too long. You don't want like a 5-minute demo reel. No one's going to listen to that whole thing. Really pare it down to 1 to 2 minutes or something and make it just snap. You really want to leave a strong impression very early on in that demo reel. Does your geographic location matter if you're trying to break into the industry? Heard a lot of my favorites talk about moving to LA to get into the industry. Is that still necessary? That has changed. This answer has changed post-COVID. I'd say pre-COVID it was very important to move. Now it's debatable because a lot of people work from home. And a lot of very successful actors only record from home and don't need to move to LA. With that said, there are certain jobs where you will need to be in the area. And it benefits you oftentimes to be in the area. Even if you can just get like face-to-face time, stuff like that. It depends on what you want to do. I think if you have, ambitions for very specific types of roles. I mean, for example, motion capture roles. Like, you have to be there. You have to be in the area. You cannot do that from home. So if that's like, I want to do that one day, then yes, eventually I think you will have to either move or you're going to be flying out a lot, which that doesn't, that's rough. But I'll say this, you can have a very successful career not moving to a location. It happens, but everyone's journey is completely different and you may not be so lucky. So it helps to move to a location because sometimes they require you to work in studio, and if you're like, okay, I'll only do the stuff that doesn't require that, then you're okay. But yeah. So it just depends on you. Do you think it's more important to work on a wide range of voices you can do or develop your normal voice as far as you can? Neither. Just act. Learn how to act. Develop how good you are at acting. And then once you have that core, then you can try to expand your range. What have you noticed as some of the more peculiar differences between recording for anime versus Western projects? I don't know about peculiar, but the biggest differences are anime, you gotta match lip flaps. Yep, it's ADR. You hear the beep, 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 and then you do the line. You do it, you have to match it the exact timing and such and such. A lot of scripts that they do for anime, they pretty much have the timing down pat. They do the hard part, and if it's a good script, you can just kind of do it and it'll naturally almost fit. That or a solid director will know what to do to either direct you to get it right or change some words here and there to make it sound better. Anime is notoriously one of the worst paid of the voice acting professions because it's probably one of the most technically difficult things you could do. Doesn't really make sense to me. I think it deserves way better pay considering how many obstacles there are. With that said, I actually enjoy it. Like I don't find it too difficult. When I did my first anime, I was like very nervous. I was like, oh my god, how am I gonna be able to act to lip flaps? And then you realize, oh no, you just kind of have to listen to it, get a sense of timing, do it, and oftentimes it works. And if not, they'll help you out. Western projects, especially like cartoons, you almost not all. I mean, sometimes you have to ADR, but most times you don't have to worry about timing at all. You just get to act, and that's very freeing. The nice thing about anime, though, is that if you come in and someone else has recorded their part of the scene, you get to hear it, and you get to play directly off of it. Whereas in Western projects, yeah, if you're doing a group record, maybe, but if not, you're just playing by yourself. That, and also anime, you get the benefit of, you see the finished picture, so you have a very clear idea of what's happening in a scene. Versus a Western project, like a cartoon, where you might see storyboards, but you're not seeing full animation, so you kind of have to trust the director to help you for context. Who would get more work? Someone who can do many voices but is average, or an excellent voice who only has one voice? An excellent actor who has only one voice. It doesn't matter how many voices you can do if you're not good at acting. Do you feel like you have to put in more energy into your performance than you would saying the same sentence in a normal conversation to compensate for the lack of physicality when you get in the recording booth? Yes, I would say so. I think it depends on the tone of the work, but yeah, I think that's why when you hear, like, let's say an on-screen actor in a voice acting role who's not experienced, it sounds flat. You can hear the flatness. You can hear that they don't sound expressive. And if it was on camera, you wouldn't notice it because maybe in that it's fine because they're doing something else with their body or facial expression. But if you're just hearing the voice, the worst offenders are when like characters need to be more expressive in a work and they're just not. Like that drives me fucking crazy. Is when you hear something and you're like, wow, they really needed to scream there, but they didn't, or they really needed to, I don't know, laugh harder or be, more excitement, and it's just flat. That's usually the worst offenders. So yeah, I would say that's important. Are agents the only way to get auditions? If not, where else could they come from? No, not at all. In fact, I know plenty of successful actors who for a long time didn't have an agent. I think a lot of actors get too wrapped up. I need an agent. Well, no, you don't. I mean, it's going to help you a lot to have an agent because then you get access to a bunch of auditions that you maybe would have gotten before. But a lot of it is just making connections and, getting, I guess, enough of a reputation where people know you and can recommend you to people. There are plenty of auditions I get just directly to myself. Not through my agent. All right, that's all the questions for this time. Thank you all for watching, and yeah, peace. Thank you to Epic Career Quest for sponsoring this video. Episode 2 of Epic Career Quest is out now. You can check it out on Google Career Certificates channel. There's a link in the description below. If you enjoy the show, go ahead and subscribe.